Honkai StarRail is an amazing game with fascinating lore, and for every character, planet, and plot point that we visit, there's endless amounts of exposition hidden between the in-game text. However, there is one problem. When you pair a community of chronic autists such as myself with the liability of skipping pages worth of in-game dialogue in order to get 60 extra jade, suddenly you start to realize why not very many people know what's going on. And today, I aim to try and remedy that by giving you all a basic rundown of Honkai StarRail's lore. If you enjoy this type of content, then do me a favor and like and subscribe. And without further ado, let's get into today's topic. Now, in order to better understand the plot, you must first understand the rules of the world, and I can think of no better place to start than what is known as a Amber Era. Think of an Amber Era like a measurement of time, not too dissimilar from how we as humans use centuries. Except in this specific scenario, take everything that you know about wacky American standards and measurements and crank it up to 11. You see, despite the Amber Era being established and turned mainstream by the single most powerful organization in the world, known as the IPC, it's not exactly a accurate measure of time. An Amber Era is actually measured by an Aeon known as Quillapoth, and I know that these are a lot of names, don't fret, I'll explain them in a second. And every single time this Aeon swings its hammer, it marks the passing of an Amber Era. That may sound all fine and good, the problem comes in once you realize that that swing is very inconsistent, ranging from 70 to 240 Trailblaze years per swing. Now, if you don't know what a Trailblaze year is, don't worry, nobody does, but given the fact that it's explicitly stated to be divided into 12 months, it's probably just human years. So now that we understand all of the time lingo, let's talk about when Honkai StarRail actually takes place. On the official Honkai StarRail YouTube channel, you can find a video titled Fables of the Stars Part 1. And the events of this video just so happen to overlap with the 2157th Amber Era, and that Amber Era officially came to a close and started the 2158th after the Fire Trailblazer pulled the flaming lance from the void. And finally, the last thing you need to know about Amber Eras is that when there was no Aeon of Preservation, there was no Amber Era. Ah, and there's that word again. Aeons. Yeah, no surprise, they're pretty important, so let's talk about them next. The Aeons in Honkai StarRail are basically like gods, except in this universe, they actually exist. There is a total of 18 confirmed Aeons, with 4 of them being dead and 1 of them being missing. And every single Aeon, in some way, shape, or form, is capable of making entire civilizations of people around them. The gods themselves usually don't end up making planets themselves, because the rules of this world are more heavily grounded in the idea of science. Instead, the Aeons have influence over the planet in what's referred to as a path. A path in StarRail is kind of like a religion, but instead of being grounded in the worship of a specific deity, it's usually more symbolic of a frame of mind. And if you want to know what the path is about, you generally don't have to look any further than its title. For example, the propagation is propagating and the nihility is nihilism. At the time of me recording this video, we have visited 4 different places that follow 4 different paths. Penacony follows harmony, the Lofu follows hunt, Belobog follows the preservation, and Asta's spaceship follows erudition. Although, I don't think you needed me to tell you that, because just by observing the environments that these people inhabit, it's pretty obvious what they're all about. The only one that may not seem immediately obvious is Belobog. Despite us only ever visiting 4 major planets, they're far from the only cultures we know about. Thanks to a somewhat collaborative project between Genius Society member number 56 and the IPC, the communication in this universe is nothing short of stellar. The phones are so effective at reaching people that you could be in the middle of your parade in another dimension and somebody would be able to ring you up over Insta Messenger. And that's not the only good thing to come out of the Genius Society either, because they also have the simulated universe attributed to their name. If you ever wonder how we knew so much about the Aeons despite their somewhat mysterious presence, it's a direct result of the simulated universe, which is a collaborative project between Herta, Screwclum, Lloyd, and Ron May. Usually these people are morally gray and don't really give a fuck what happens to you, but they're smart, so who cares? Now at this point, you should have a pretty good idea about how this world came to be, so now we're gonna real quickly go over each of the individual people who are currently affecting it. This is gonna be a lot, and all of the people that I'm gonna mention are very important, so just try and stay with me, will ya? First up, we have the Stellon Hunters, a group of people who follow a being known as Elio. Elio is capable of predicting the future, and using this power, he is constantly working towards a world that he considers idealistic for both him and his many followers. The current people who are considered Stellon Hunters are Blade, Kafka, Sam, and most likely Firefly. Next up, we have the Genius Society, 123 people selected by Norris, and most technological marvels within the world of StarRail were created by them. Now, they are a very infamous group within the solar system, and you're gonna be seeing a lot of them on Asta's spaceship. Examples of people who associate with the Genius Society are Herta, Screwclum, and Ron May. Now, inversely paralleling the Genius Society, we have a group known as the Intellectia Guild, which is a sub-faction of the IPC. The IPC is a group group of people who believe that information deserves to be shared with the wider universe, and they were the very same people responsible for making sure the work of Genius Society member number 53 spread across the entire cosmos. Examples of people who associate with the Intellectia Guild is Dr. Ratio, and he is a man who is so committed to making sure intelligence is shared equally throughout the universe that he willingly associated himself with a couple million gacha addicts. Oh yeah, and that statue he wears on his head, yeah, he puts that on because people think he's very handsome. Seeing as we're already talking about the Intellectia Guild, let's go ahead and move on to the IPC. The IPC is kind of like America, and it even has the crazy IRS agents. As of now, we actually don't know all too much about the IPC, but they seem to be a very business-focused society. The IPC, at one point or another, had direct ties with Jarilo 6, and through their trading, the people on Belobog ended up taking after the faction of preservation. And this is actually the reason why Belobog follows the path of preservation despite being thousands of light years away from the IPC. Like I said, it's basically just America colonizing places and forcing their religion upon them. You know how it is. Examples of people who associate with the IPC are Topaz, Dr. Ratio, and Avengerine. Speaking of Jarilo 6, let's go ahead and start talking about the Architects. The Architects was a group of people that was limited to Belobog, which is a small city located on Jarilo 6. These people were the ones responsible for building the giant robot that was used in the Cocolia boss fight, and they are also the ones who took the preventative measures to make sure that the world didn't get washed away by the Eternal Freeze. Next up, we have my personal favorite faction known as the Mass Fools. This is a group of people who would do anything and everything in pursuit of the idea of entertainment. And when I say anything and everything, I do mean it. Their morals are not grounded in any form of rule. In fact, if you try and point one out, they will actively spit in your face. These are the type of people who will set an orphanage on fire just to see the pretty colors. So far, we have met 3 members of the Mass Fools: Giovanni, Sparkle, and Sampo. Sampo will do anything for money because that's what brings him joy. Sparkle is an active nuisance to everybody around her so long as the thing that she's doing is in her best interest. And that interest as of now is trying to get into the Genius Society. And Giovanni, who's probably the nicest of the bunch, simply wishes to bring entertainment to any planet he visits. Hence why he brought the Ethereum Wars to Jarilo 6. The Garden of Recollection is a faction that we were introduced to on Penacony, and this faction constantly seeks to preserve and captivate the memories of other people. More often than not, the people in the Garden of Recollection have no grievances with actively taking the memories of somebody they know. And if somebody in the Garden of Recollection decides to take your memories, you wouldn't even be able to recall it. The Knights of Beauty are a relatively inconsequential faction that you will bump into once or twice. After the Aeon associated with Beauty died, these knights have been constantly trying to seek them out, although as of now they don't seem to be very successful. Examples of people who follow the Knights of Beauty are Argenti. This next one's not very significant, but I do find it very funny, and they are known as the Doctors of Chaos. So remember how earlier I mentioned that there's an Aeon associated with nihilism? Well, that thing's name is Nine. It believes that life has no purpose, and the Doctors of Chaos serve the expressed and exclusive goal of trying to convince this thing that life is worth living. Moving on to a group that's actually relevant, we have the Annihilation Gang. The Annihilation Gang aren't exactly followers of destruction, but more so people who want to be praised in the eyes of Nanook. At the time of recording this video though, a supposed Galaxy Ranger waltzed right on in and killed the main leader. So it seems like the Annihilation Gang is out of commission for the time being. Examples of people who associate with the Annihilation Gang is Duke Infernum, the Priest, the Shacklebound, and the Tuner. Don't worry, we're almost done here, only got 2 left. Second to last is a faction known as the Whispering Flames. This is a relatively underground faction, and if you're not chronically obsessed with Ting Yun, you probably wouldn't know about it, but the Whispering Flames was a group of people who established connections with 16 different planets under the Lo Fu, and they are solely responsible for making sure that the trade empire that they have rivals that of the IPC. As far as I know, there's only one person associated with the Whispering Flames, and that is Ting Yun. Finally, we have the Ten Lords Commission. The Ten Lords Commission is a group of people with physical ailments that now spend the rest of their lives to try and ensure that Lo Fu residents have a dignified death. After being cursed with abundance, people are no longer capable of dying, and if they're left to rot for too long, they become something known as the Mara Struck. The Ten Lords Commission are the ones who make sure that that doesn't happen. Examples of people within the Ten Lords Commission are Huohua, Shui Yi, and Hana. And if you're wondering what their ailments are, it's Huohua's tail, Hana drank an elixir that makes her unable to sleep, and Shui Yi is dead. And for every Mara Struck that Shui Yi kills, she'll be allotted 12 more hours in the waking world. Now, there are 18 Aeons, and I could go through all of them, but they're probably worth their own video, so I'm just not going to bother. But instead, I want to leave you with one last thing, and that is the idea of a Stellaron. The Stellaron is a cancer that is given to a planet after it is associated with a specific Aeon. Stellarons can never be fully quelled, but they can be powered down. And the purpose of Honkai StarRail story is going to multiple different planets, dispelling the Stellaron, and eventually confronting the Aeon known as Nanook.